George Galloway, who's an expert from a British expert on. George Galloway is I think he's Scottish, and he's basically the Middle East expert. So he's having a debate with a student from Oxford, who is originally from north of Israel, is 4.6 population. Oh, come on, what's the name of the country? Dit ik wel niet. Anyway, so they are talking about Arab Spring and what it means, and this is basically during when it's going on, when the Arab Spring is actually going on. Then we have a video from Hillary Clinton, who's commenting on what happened in the UN Council. That was basically a UN resolution to invade in Syria was blocked. That night before was blocked by China and Russia. Then we have a comment on a Russian television on Clinton. And finally, we have another on basically the Russian television commenting on the drivers behind the Arab Spring and what they feel is actually happening in the world. So this is basically gives a perspective on how Arab Spring was perceived in
You're
the
talking
West.
about CIA.
I'm talking about CIA. All right, so let's get started. So this is George Galloway.
Hello, Mr. Galloway. My name's Abdullah Salam. I'm from Lebanon.
Lebanon,
I
yes.
agree with a lot of what you said about the importance of recognizing the Palestinian narrative. And of course, I think if there's to be a just peace between Palestinians and Israelis, Arabs and Israelis, the Palestinian narrative would need to be recognized. But I don't agree with a lot of what you said else about the Arab world. Specifically, I heard you often saying what we cannot see or should see about the Arab world as students here at Oxford. I know the Arab world quite well, so I think I see it quite well. But what I think you should see, and don't see, is the Arab Spring. And that I found really surprising. In fact, everything you said could have been said in 2009. You had no room for the massive pro-democracy revolutions in Tunisia, Egypt, or Syria. What remained important was the Iraq War, some people who indeed were assaulted in Bahrain, but 35,000 people in Syria had no room in your speech. No room. You had room for the Palestinian Nakba in 1948, but not for the ongoing slaughter by the Syrian regime. And the problem, I think, isn't just the fact that you have no sympathy for the Arab pro-democracy movement, which is the most popular movement sweeping across the Arab world. The problem is that it doesn't fit in your narrative, and I'm going to give you two examples. One, in Syria, it's not American flags that are being burnt, nor British flags, nor French flags. This might be inconvenient for you, but it's Russian and Chinese flags, because they veto a resolution allowing for an intervention in Syria. And a second example, you talk about bombs being dropped on Arab countries. Yes, I in Lebanon was in a city where Israel dropped bombs on, so I've experienced it firsthand, and I know the suffering. But let's talk about an example where Western forces have dropped bombs, in Libya most recently. And there, I defy you to find, during the Western intervention in Libya, one single, and I'm talking rhetorically because you tend to like to speak rhetorically, but one single demonstration in the Arab world from Morocco to Yemen demonstrating against the Western intervention in Libya. You will not find one.
Well, you're
What do you
simply.
mean, he said? Do you know?
Sorry.
What does this mean?
So basically, Galloway gave a comment on what's happening in the Middle East. He gave a speech on the Middle East, and obviously within his presentation, he did not comment on the Arab Spring. So he says, okay, basically, all right. So you're talking about what's happening with the Palestinians and the Palestinian case, and how the West should be more supportive of the Palestinian case. That I can agree, but how come you're not commenting on the most important movement that's happening at the moment in the Middle East, which is the Arab Spring movement? And basically, how come you're not more supportive of the Arab Spring movement? Now, Galloway is going to respond to that.
You're simply wrong, as a matter of fact, on your last point. There were hundreds, maybe thousands, of demonstrations against the American and British bombardment of Libya. And so I invite you to return to that point again in the quiet of the cloister. And as one rhetorician to another, let me tell you that it's seldom wise to say there's not one single of anything, especially when dealing with an Arab world of 350 million people. But you have obviously been deeply involved in your studies, too busy to know my role in the Arab Spring. You don't know, for example, that I am quite a significant international personality in Tunisia. You don't know that my friend for 20 years, Sheikh Rashid Ghanouchi, whose driver I was, chauffeur I was, is now the leader of the ruling party in Tunisia. You don't apparently know that I played a role in Sheikh Rashid's election campaign, the only free and fair election that has ever been held in Tunisia. You don't appear to be aware of anything I've ever written or broadcast on the...
What he's talking?
So he's saying, how can you are not, how come you're criticizing me on the Arab Spring? Basically, he's now saying, okay, first of all, what you're saying, there was no single anti-American demonstration or anti-Western demonstration, even though Westerners bombed Libya. He said, well, okay, basically that's factually incorrect. But what you're also incorrect about is that I do not support the Arab Spring. So basically this is about how in Western world and not only just generally Western world, but also in more intellectual cycles like at the Oxford University, people were looking at the Arab Spring movement at that moment, right? So this is, I would say, the intellectual elite in the Western world debating about the Arab Spring movement.
So he just he said he does not have no responsibility for Arab Spring.
No. He says actually he's deeply involved with the Arab Spring and he's very much supportive of the Arab Spring movement.
Westerners.
Yes. And him personally.
Revolution in Tunisia. There is no person in Britain was more involved in the Tunisian revolution which began the Arab Spring than me. That too is a matter of fact, of which you are, oddly I may say, Abdullah, apparently oblivious. You're apparently oblivious of my role in Egypt. You're oblivious to the fact that I was deported by Mubarak and declared persona non grata and began what turned out to be a mercifully short period of open agitation calling for the overthrow of Mubarak, and was then able to return to Cairo in triumph upon the overthrow of the dictator.
What he said from Mubarak?
Mubarak declared him a persona non grata as he was backing the Arab Spring movement. Mubarak kicked him out of the country and declared him a persona non grata. So what he's saying is that what you're accusing me of is absolutely ridiculous because you are completely unaware of my role within the Arab Spring movement.